Okay. So I was recently covering the Krumphau both in class and on Facebook and kind of trolling but kind of serious. And when I filmed the video, my phone decided that the fan was 3 billion times louder than it actually was. And this really bothered some people, even though I could hear myself fine, but I get it. It is annoying. And I can elaborate in more detail. So I wanted to go to Meyer's 1568 treatise, which is the one that I primarily teach from. It's the one that I have a physical copy of. So I've cross checked uh, this Kevin Moore's translation with Jeffrey Forging's translation, and they are very very similar, almost one to one. And I noticed that something that Meyer says very interestingly is when you crooked cut, go up quickly, throw the point with crossed hands. Note that the crooked cuts are many, and he uses the word Krumphau to say crooked cuts, and that all cuts that are done with hands put crosswise or crossed will be known as crooked cuts. This is in a fairly stark contrast to the very specific nature of the Krumphau in other systems. So let me give you an example of that. So here I am in my gym talking, and this fan is just blasting away my words. Not really. But here we stand in Nebenhut, literally just the low guard, with our dominant side back, sort of open stance. I'm going to take a pivot step. I'm going to take a deep step to my right, my opponent's left. I'm going to cross my hands, wheel up and over, and cut to my opponent's left ear. So if you're the viewer viewing this, your left ear is being cut, or to my opponent's arms, or to the flat of my opponent's extended sword, depending on what is the closest target. I find that these are in increasing order of likelihood. If your opponent's close enough for this to hit him in the head, one of you has failed at footwork. If your opponent's close enough for you to hit them in the arms, if they're any good, they're probably already drawing back and you're going to end up hitting their sword. This is why you have a follow-up movement. You never expect your first attack in any play to work, so you follow up with a Shielhau to the head. The Shielhau, the squinter, yep. The squinter is also counted among the crooked cuts, and it applies equally to the long or short edges. I can't remember who, because there are a bunch of conversations going on with this. Someone was saying, though, that when Meyer is saying this, crosswise or crossed, he's just differentiating long and short edges. No, because he explicitly says here that the term crooked cut applies equally to long or short edges. Thus, it is a crooked cut when you hold your hands crosswise. So Meyer here is kind of taking an all squares are rectangles approach, but not all rectangles are squares. And we could differentiate it as another person says as a capital K Krumphau and a lowercase k Krumphau. Sure. Yeah. So then he goes out to describe, firstly, when one will cut straight to your head from his right, step with your right foot well out from his strike, as I demonstrate here with this passing step. Boop. Now that's to the left, but just reverse this all. No, step with your right foot, yeah, to his left, okay. So that you can avoid his strike with a spring to his left, and likewise cut from your right with crossed hands against his cut. Thus you come with your blade between his head and his sword on his short edge, which is facing him, and when it connects, step further around and displace or transfer onto his arm between his head and his sword. In this you will have seen the opening. Yeah, so just don't wait long, allow your cuts to fly quickly to the opening. He's just saying, do the technique, and then you've got openings to work to. Work from there, as I would say in class. Then he talks a little bit about Zufechten, the circle, crooked. With the crooked, step well if you want to displace. Yeah. So you should step well out from his strike. And some people were also saying, actually, this crookedness is not applying to the crossed hands in systems like Kunsteffekten, KDF, and RDL, Ring and Danzig Lu. My comment on that is stepping off the center line is just kind of good fencing. This crossed hands is much more difficult for, like, okay, let's say you have people cross training from other martial arts. They understand innately that getting out of the way of the danger is a good idea. This crossing of the hands and having to have a very kind of loose, awkward grip on your pommel here, especially people that don't have the most limber wrists, they find these movements very awkward. So it would seem obvious to me that the emphasis be placed more on the hand position than on the strategic importance of, if a thing's going this way, you should be out of the way. Right? Um, you know, if it were just about moving off the center line, would we not find him repeating, or other fencing masters repeating this crookedness with any other techniques, that involve getting off the center line and attacking to their center line simultaneously? Um, that would really make just a simple passing step Oberhau to the center line a Krumphau if your definition of crooked is that it comes at a steep angle off the line. If I'm misinterpreting what someone's saying, by the way, please correct me here. Yeah, and here's an example of the squinter where he says, this is also an example of a crooked cut because your hands end up crossed. And then you can double it. People were saying, if it's with hands crossed, then how do you do it from the opposite side where your hands will not cross? Well, if you do it from the opposite side here, so there your hands cross in doing the cut if it's done from your right side, and your hands uncross in doing the cut from your left side. So the hands are still crossed, it's just whether or not it's at the beginning or end of the cut, right? I'm yakking about something else. Yeah, here's where I'm yakking about stepping offline online and saying that that's kind of silly. And then here's some applications of it. So somebody's thrusting a lot. They give you these little tippy tap pokes. Often happens in Zufechten, especially with new fencers, especially with guys coming from modern Olympic fencing. Well, you can just beat that, thrust aside, then cut to the head. Or if somebody's giving you a low cut, you can cover the low cut and attack to the head. Secondly, somebody says that if they are ask that if you have don't you have little leverage in this position? Well, it's not really about leverage because it's sort of a beating motion. You're not really staying in this crossed hand position as you're cutting it. Yeah, you're not really staying here, as I demonstrate here on the solo drill. It's bang, bang, He also says specifically, you're trying to cut to the flat, which is, easier said than done in motion, but that helps you gain leverage because the narrow bit of your edge is transferring all of its force across a much wider surface area in comparison to your opponent. Yeah, again, long edge on the flat. Thereby, you weaken him so that he can barely recover for another strike. Then before he recovers, you're on his head with winding and flicking. Yep, so there you go. Yeah, he says don't, try to leverage against it. Change through under his blade and work to his side. So, don't don't let the blades even contact at this. He does, however, say somewhere, yes, when you crooked cut at his strong, be sure to wind and overrun with it. Yeah, so if you do end up with your weak, the foible, right over here, on his strong, the forte, you need to wind through and be quick about it not working. A lot of times you will step to the side, you'll beat to the sword, and then nothing will... You can feel immediately before you even see it happening, oh, his sword budged maybe a couple of inches, I don't have an opening here. And they hold off hard so that you can't cross over or have other work from above. So they, come up into crown or whatever. Thus one through, under, and through with the pommel. Cast the pommel to the other side over his blade or arm from the outside. Wrench downwards. Strike in with the long edge deep to his head. Or cast the pommel in between both of his hands. How this figure reveals. So here the guy has even not gone up into cron, but gone up into a half-sorted position. And so he comes over with the pommel and is going to wrench down, cut him to the face, pommel him in the face, just disarm him, throw him to the ground, whatever. Then you're wrestling. So it's not the end of the world, even if he is strong like that. One more time. Here, the motion, I step offline, I cut with crossed hands to the blade, his hands, or his head, whatever target presents itself. And then I flick to the head. And then thirdly, he doesn't say this here, thirdly, I would want to have my Obzug and cover, assuming that this didn't work or assuming he's still alive and active. Likewise, from Vexel with my right foot dominant side forward, crossed hands, I uncross my hands here. Same thing, stepping offline, crossing my hands again to finish to the head. So, hopefully that helps. And now I've forgotten what button I used to stop my recordings. Oh god, this is so messy. Whatever, bye.